Good evening, afternoon, morning, whatever time you're watching this. Hello, everybody out there. All I see Born Free Films. Hello, I'm responding. Hi. Thank you for being here. When anybody watches this, if they have questions, please put them in the comments whenever you watch it. This was kind of a spur of the moment video. Wasn't planning on doing it. Did a lengthy one with JR and Curtis last night. Although, what happens with those, I had like 5 topics. We got through one. But at some point in time, if we're talking too much legal or detail, it's going to make everybody's head turn to mush. So, got to put an end to it at some point in time. So I wasn't planning on doing anything, but as I do every day, I look online and do a general search for Alpine Securities because I like to know what's going on. So I do, and I check the status of the actions to Supreme Court, et cetera, because I'm concerned, or the issue is how it applies to GTII. So that's going to be the topic that we're going to talk about. It's something that I discovered today, and then, I'm going to speculate about a bunch of stuff as I usually do. Certainly not legal advice, of course. But maybe just kind of think about what I'm talking about. If you want to investigate it yourself, I think it would be an interesting subject to investigate. I think anybody could just go online and check it out. And maybe you'll find interesting stuff. So we will get to that before. But again, like last night's live stream. And let me briefly address. So GTI, I'm address the chimpanzee in the kennel, as they say. GTII. I'll do a live stream at the end of the week, no matter what. I'm hoping to have substantive information that I didn't have the last time I did that when I do it. So that's where I will leave it as such. And if I get information before the end of the week, I'll put it out. I'm waiting to receive some information so I can find out what's new and exciting that's going on. So that's an answer to anybody who might have a GTI specific question. This is GTI specific, sort of, because it involves Alpine. But that's the GTII part. So before we start, just want to let you know, just like last night's live stream, we're sponsored tonight first by Al's Porcupine Shop, whose motto is, if you don't stick with us, we'll stick you. And Harry's House of Borscht, where pet donkeys are always welcome. And finally, from the House of Chickpeas, which does not mean what your dirty minds thinks it means. Anyway, thank you to those sponsors. And, I think we're going to have new sponsors each night. And I appreciate their gracious sponsorship and frequent these places because they're unique and novel and very exciting. So today, like every other day, I looked Alpine Securities in the morning Pacific time. Depending on where you're watching this, that might be a different time zone. But Pacific time, one of the first things I do is I Google up Alpine Securities. Sometimes I, put some attachments to that. But today, when I did, for whatever reason, it took me to something that caught my attention. And what I saw was it involving some company. And again, I urge all of you, or any of you want to follow up on this, check it out. I'd appreciate any input from anyone. But I saw I'm putting out Alpine Securities, and I double checked it was the Alpine Securities. As far as I could tell, it is the Alpine Securities. The Alpine Securities being these Alpine Securities that's at issue with regard to GTII. I didn't see any other Alpine Securities. But anyway, so I'm looking online and I find this company. It's called Vocodia. I'll spell it. Vocodia Holdings Corp. And it's a public company. And, we've heard, and I've talked to you, ad nauseum about Alpine and its historic rise and fall and all the things it was accused of doing, the expulsions, the expedited expulsions. its application to the Supreme Court, it's kind of representing a position as to FINRA that we like, but also, it appears to me, and it appeared to the regulators, no matter how deficient they were, and this is kind of an example, that they had plenty of problems. So that they had been expelled, and recently, I think, recently being, within the past 30 days or less, their expulsion was confirmed by the appellate section of FINRA. And that's separate and apart, if you recall, from the expedited expulsion that's before the U.S. Supreme Court. They didn't get expelled because they didn't do anything naughty. Their contention about the Supreme Court is that the FINRA does not have constitutional authority to do what they do. It's not that these guys were golden children and they're pushing that position. Not at all. Their position is purely a constitutional argument. Anyway, so I see this thing about Vocodia, and I wonder who that is. So I kind of looked through it, and then I looked at, I think I looked at a Reddit thread on it, and they went public apparently about a year ago. They had problems, and lo and behold, I don't know if you ever heard this happening to any company, but they went public, and then they got delisted. And they got delisted down to the OTC. That's kind of odd. I'm not referring to GTII or anything, but anyway. And then I read some more, and again, I know nothing about this company other than when I stumbled upon it today in this transaction. So I kind of looked, and then I kind of confirmed this with somebody else, and maybe the information is wrong, but it reflected that the market cap of this company, a public company, is $375,000. Now, you all know JR and JR's pet cat Sammy. JR's pet cat Sammy has a bigger market cap than $375,000. So that reflects not a lot of, let's equate market cap to value. That doesn't reflect a lot of value. So it's interesting that a company that doesn't seem to be in any financial position to hire anybody. In fact, they say they're taking, austerity measures, was able to engage with Alpine Securities. And Alpine Securities is an investment banker in this particular occasion. And the way it's described, and so the transaction is March 19th of 2025. So with all the stuff going on about Alpine, I don't know how anybody, I know everybody watches my videos, but even the people that don't, if they're paying attention to Alpine and you did a cursory look, I would think like management of a company that was going to enter into a contract with another company probably at least would do a cursory 3-minute check online, seeing if there was anything of note. And I would say, if anybody did a cursory review of Alpine, they would find a lot of stuff that would cause you concern. And, just to remind everybody, before we go back to what these particular documents reference, because it's going to be like, it's nauseating. But if you recall, so Alpine got in a lot of trouble over 40 years, admitted to a lot of misconduct, including suspicious activity reports, not filing them, which related to apparently a bunch of micro transactions, perhaps shorts that weren't reported. And who knows what happened with those stocks. And if it involves GTII or other companies, we really don't know. We really don't know what happened because they didn't file the reports, or the reports were inaccurate. Then they kind of were accused of misappropriating money or mistreating their clients so much, and to the extent that FINRA had sought to expel them from engaging in any further business. And while they got suspended and a cease and desist, they got expelled and a cease and desist order saying that you can't do any of this stuff anymore. Why would you have to say, don't do any, if you get expelled, why would you have to say, don't do any of this stuff anymore? Because the way their system is set up, there's a long period of time before a ruling and a final ruling, final, where no appeals, can't go to a court, can't go to another situation. So we have that. Then after that happens, and I like to refresh the record just because all these things are complicated. So if you hear the facts enough, it might get boring, but it might also become clearer in your mind. That's why I kind of state them. So after they got expelled, but before the final expulsion was, in other words, all the appellate stuff in FINRA, one of which has happened, the SEC, and then the Court of Appeal, thousands and tens of thousands of times they violated, or apparently violated, the very same cease and desist order. That's when the FINRA, who, I guess it takes them 40 years to see the light, then they sought the expedited expulsion, but they really didn't do that properly, and big controversy erupted, and nothing has been completed in that regard. Went up to the Supreme Court, and there's a request to the Supreme Court. We'll see what happens. But in the meantime, they got expelled. That original expulsion order back in 2022 got confirmed in March of 2025, which is ironic in light of the timing of what I'm telling you now. So all that stuff is public. So why would a company engage Alpine Securities in light of that? I would think, if I saw that, that would be, I'd be running away. And oh, by the way, I left out, because I'm just picking and choosing what the particular violations are. But all that stuff and misconduct, purported theft of millions of dollars in client money, and some of it they had to pay back, and they had a bunch of fines, all kinds of stuff. During that also, if you recall, they tried to make a convicted sex offender a representative to the regulators on behalf of the company. They, as it turned out, this person who admitted to the criminal conduct, he confessed, that's kind of admitted to it. They tried to, and he had worked for Alpine or Alpine's subsidiary or whatever. He worked for him for a few years, got caught red-handed, and that's not just a parable, and so to speak, literally. It admitted to a felony and continued working. And after, before a request was made to FINRA to have him be a representative to the regulators, he disclosed that he had been convicted. So everybody knew he had been convicted, and was convicted of by the way, it was with a minor under 16, in a really awkward, I don't know how it could not be awkward, but in a really awkward environment. And it's, I'm sure it wasn't the first or last time that he's ever engaged in that misconduct. But that's who they wanted to make, in essence, the face of the company, in a way, because they wanted him to be the representative, and they were aware of what was going on because it was in the record. Everybody knew about it. So all that, plus, basically being expelled, expulsion orders. And again, unless there's another Alpine Securities Corporation, and if there is, I couldn't find it, but if there is, I don't know who it is. I don't know why there'd be two Alpine Securities Corporations. But anyway, if there is, I apologize, but it doesn't appear there's going to be two. But it's really confusing to me that in March of 2025, in light of what I just said, and the final expulsion order and all that stuff, that they got hired by this company who had apparently a $375,000 market cap. I mean, who paid for that? And in this, it describes Alpine Securities Corporation as a broker-dealer and boutique investment firm known for its expertise in providing tailored financial solutions to emerging companies. Excuse me. Absurd. And, when I was researching this, so this is kind of where it took me. So I saw this today, and I'm kind of looking, just basically, I didn't didn't hire a private investigator. I just kind of took a brief look at it. And I kind of thought about it, and in some of the Reddit posts, and I don't know the accuracy of this, but they were saying that a lot of them were pissed off because they thought that there was misstatements by management before they were delisted. Now, I don't know anything about that, but when I heard about statements about, false statements made before delisting, it immediately took me to GTII. And then what took me to GTII and caused me to think about it in a different way was, I don't understand why these guys are together. Makes no sense to me under the circumstances of Alpine Securities. Makes no sense to me. I don't really know what's going on. Maybe it's completely innocuous, but I don't get it. But if in fact Alpine Securities is cooperating with management that some people have questioned their actions, couldn't Alpine Securities have coordinated with prior management in GTII? Because again, timing wise, we're talking about March of 2025. It's obviously not a quiet topic. I don't know why. And part of my disgust here is, they've been kicked out, right? And they're still operating business. There's a bunch of investors apparently who think they've been screwed, and FINRA and the SEC let this continue. That's the point. If you recall, one of the things I suggested in light of the record was for the feds to go in and put Alpine Securities in a receivership. If, notwithstanding whether their constitutional rights have been violated or not, if their conduct is inappropriate and they have harmed people, that appears to be what the public record suggests, then they should not be operating. They shouldn't be able to engage in business. They shouldn't be able to engage in this kind of this thing sounds squirrely to me. It might be perfectly legit, but the things don't make, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Again, especially in light of Alpine's, current status. Because again, everybody knows. So why would somebody choose Alpine? Why would you go to that if, knowing all you know? And again, the problem is the SEC and FINRA have not interjected themselves. They let this go on. So let's say it's not above board. Then what happens to the existing shareholders who have gotten screwed? Or are they continue to get screwed? Why doesn't the SEC or FINRA interject themselves into that? Perhaps they don't know. So now they know. Now they're on record. Maybe the new SEC, maybe they should look into this, because this is really maybe an ongoing thing. At least it should be examined. Maybe again, perfectly legit, but should be examined. And it might provide some information about other things. So March 19th, March 19th. Was it March 19th? Yeah, March 19th, they're hired, which is 2 months ago, or less than 2 months ago. April 1, they put out their PR, April 1 being Vocodia Holdings, who basically, and it's put up by the CEO. I'm not going to list his name, but I think this is the CEO. I think that on Reddit where the shareholders are kind of bitching about the management, but I don't know for sure. But they claim to be a multifaceted AI software development company, which also struck me for obviously the current situation with GTII. And they talk about their situation a little bit. It's like basically a letter to the shareholders. April 1, I know things aren't, and they're based in Florida. I know things aren't great. I know in September we got delisted. I know things are tough, but we hired to save the day. It's not exactly their terminology, but they say in here, they go back to, we will also work closely with Alpine Securities, who we engaged in March 2025, to explore strategic pathways for financing, uplisting, and maximizing long-term shareholder value. We believe a more robust capital structure and a more visible market listing are both achievable and necessary. This is April 1. So I find this astonishing. If any of you wanted to look into Vocodia Holdings and their CEO, that might be nicely, not in any way showing any hostility, but nicely. It might be interesting. And again, the CEO of the company, his name is Brian, Brian Podolak, Podolak. At least as of April 1, 2025, he was the co-founder, chairman, and CEO of the company. Name of the company again is Vocodia, Vocodia Holdings Corp. They went public company, based in Florida. This stuff doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If maybe you can take a look at it out there, maybe you'll come up with something. Maybe you'll discover something, but something doesn't smell right to me. But I don't know. I really don't know. It just could be I don't have all the facts, but I don't understand why anybody would do business at the current time and the size of the company. I don't know how they would pay fees. Again, doesn't make sense. Caught my attention, wanted to bring to your attention, just throw it out there. It's interesting to follow. That's all I will say. I babbled long enough. I appreciate all of you have watched. I will look in the comments after some of you have a chance to explore those names and see if you guys can come up with any things, or if you have any theories of your own. I'm going to be happy to look at that and curious, because I just happened to see it today. Again, a cursory review, but it's Alpine. It's Alpine in business in the current time frame. Kind of doesn't make sense. And where's the SEC and FINRA? And perhaps Mr. Atkins, this is maybe one of the first things you should take a quick peek at, right? Because if in fact, as people think, Alpine has a concentrated short position still, or somebody else has a short position in GTII, I don't know if there are. Appears they were at some point in time. But if there is, and we get some activity by regulators specifically as to this, that they will take activity, then it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'll leave it at that. Anyway, for all you out there, I welcome any ideas, any thoughts. I will take a look at the comments afterwards. I welcome you and thank you for watching. Be well. Have a great